This paper will explore the experiences of military-connected LGBT youth. In 1995, Dr. Elon Meyer began describing the stress associated with the LGBT population as minority stress. In this case, it is the chronic exposure to stressors dealing with a minority status that could increase the risk of adverse health effects in a particular community. These stressors can be both normative or minority-based. Normative stressors are stresses that the majority of youth encounter frequently, like taking standardized tests, final exams, and even taking their driver's test. Minority stressors are ones felt by a particular minority. LGBT, for instance, deal with the stress of stigma associated with their community. Minority stress theory also applies to those of oppressed races, religions, and socioeconomic statuses. Military-connected youth also face stressors that most civilian youth do not, such as frequent moves, the changing of schools, and long separation from parents or caregivers. Sexual minority stress is one thing, and then add the youth's military affiliation and the stressors compound. As the number of intersectionality increases, so does the cumulative stress. The obstacles faced by sexual minority youth can lead to an increase in anxiety, depression, social alienation, emotional discourse, and suicidal ideations. Without proper supports and healthy coping mechanisms, research shows that there is a significantly higher chance of substance misuse. And as the intersectionality of an individual increases, the percentage for unhealthy coping mechanisms increase as well. Obstacles that increase stressors in military-connected LGBT youth include a lack of connection to the dominant culture. 65% of military-connected youth attend public schools, and while many will have a high percentage of military-connected students, the dominant culture of civilian lifestyle will often prevail. 3.5% of military-affiliated youth are labeled as sexual minorities. This small percentage means that the heterosexist culture, too, will dominate. However, this does not mean that 96.5% of that population will not be accepting of the LGBTQ lifestyle. Many of those will be fully accepting of and allies to those who identify as sexual minority youth. Decreased likelihood of support and protection from family is also an obstacle. This is in part due to the lack of shared stigma. The military has a long history rooted in heterosexism. Because of this history, it is realistic to believe that youth in military-connected families would also be affected by this toxic philosophy. Webster's dictionary defines heterosexism as a discrimination or prejudice against non-heterosexual people based on the belief that heterosexuality is the only normal and natural expression of sexuality. With nearly 2 million military-connected children in the United States, it's estimated that 3.5%, as mentioned previously, identify as LGBT. These children go to public schools, live within the community or within base housing where these beliefs can be magnified. The heterosexist beliefs can be magnified. The heterosexist mentality can be passed down from generation to generation, and children of service members raised in this heterosexist home can transfer their parents' beliefs and cause significant damage to sexual minority youth. As you can see on this slide, there's a 30-year history of exclusion, starting with President Ronald Reagan in 1982. I apologize for that typo. When he formalized the exclusion of LGBT from serving, to restriction via the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, and inclusion, where President Obama repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and back to exclusion of the transgender ban that was overridden via executive order by President Joe Biden in 2021. Today, the military is the most inclusive it has ever been towards the LGBT community. The impact on military readiness. The disclosure of non-heterosexual lifestyle can create a great deal of conflict within the family. When a service member fosters the same historic belief that the military once fostered, the military-connected youth could be impacted negatively in ways including disclosure, concealment, and outness of the LGBT individual. This all plays a significant role in the mental health status of LGBT military-connected youth. There are several ways in which the lack of acceptance, inclusion, or proper supports of the LGBT lifestyle can have a negative impact on military readiness. When there is chronic stress on the home front, that stress is brought to work. A 2019 study showed that an average of 13.5% of married and 7.5% of single service members reported that the high levels of stress at home had a negative impact in their job, particularly during deployment. Family stress can lead to trouble sleeping, coupled with the high stress of combat. Fatigue can impact job performance. Also noted in the 2019 study, overall attitude and complacency was noted by superiors of those dealing with chronic stress. Family experience also has an impact in military retention. If a service member's family is not supportive of the heavy work demands, culture, and beliefs held by the military, the service member is less likely to re-enlist or sign a new service contract. Retention is also affected based on the acceptance and inclusion of LGBT service and family members. It is indirectly related through family satisfaction. The ability to retain service members directly impacts mission readiness. If the military fails to retain enough soldiers, sailors, airmen, or Marines, missions will suffer due to lack of personnel availability. The good news, however, is that in a 2020 study, nearly 87% of families that identify as an LGBT family, meaning either a parent or child identifies as a sexual minority, find greater acceptance among leadership and feel safe within their community. As with any population, it's critical to be culturally aware of who the client is and what environments play a role in their experiences. Both the military and LGBT community have their own languages, acronyms, and nuances. While it is impossible to know what everything means, it is important to learn about each culture. Clients are looking for competence from their practitioner, but don't expect perfection. In addition to the military and LGBT cultures, clients will bring additional intersectionality to the table: race, ethnicity, and religion, which can also cause conflict within the individual. Again, knowing a little background will be beneficial to assist the client in processing. With the current Department of Defense policy on LGBT personnel in the military, there are no issues with confidentiality other than those that affect mission readiness. The lack of connection to the dominant culture that sexual minority youth suffer perpetuates this stress. And this can be exacerbated because stress related to issues of race, religion, or ethnicity, most youth have the support and protection of their families because of the shared stigma. But that's not always the case for sexual minority youth. The practitioner-client relationship is built on a strong foundation of trust. Trust is built by showing competency and treating the individual with dignity and self-worth. Demonstrating integrity and service to the client allows them to understand that there is a shared goal of addressing the problem and that the practitioner is there to help guide the journey. The Department of Health and Human Services emphasizes that familial involvement and engagement in the therapeutic process for sexual minority youth is incredibly constructive. For families where support is lacking or denied, it can help to create a trusting environment for families to engage in difficult conversations. It also allows for the practitioner to provide support to the sexual minority youth and help advocate for their needs. Lack of familial support was mentioned earlier. Family sessions and engagement with the therapeutic process could increase the understanding of their child's needs and build a greater support system for the client. Cognitive behavioral therapy has long been considered the gold standard when working with adolescents. It's an evidence-based approach centered on 3 basic principles. Psychological problems are based on negative thought and patterns. Learned patterns are that of unhealthy behaviors, and that learning how to cope should lessen the symptoms felt. CBT works to modify the client's internal thoughts and external perceptions within the minority population. The affirmative approach to CBT has been shown to increase success with sexual minority youth. The use of gay affirming practice magnifies the effect of CBT by celebrating the person for who they are and advocating for the supports that work for them. Solution-focused brief therapy is another evidence-based practice that works with sexual minority youth, especially in the school setting. It is a positive psychology approach that focuses on solutions to the problems versus the problems themselves. It is a short-term intervention platform, typically lasting 5 to 8 sessions. Sessions are motivational, focus on the client's strengths, and is future-oriented. The use of scales or imagery is used to promote success. Questions such as, what would the dream outcome be? Or on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your feelings on familial support? These scales can help the sexual minority youth to see improvement or decline if used throughout the session. There is a sense of empowerment and control for the youth through solution-focused brief therapy. There are several avenues that a sexual minority youth can take when looking for help, support, and guidance in 2023. Online resources are plentiful and allow 24/7 access to resources, crisis center hotlines that provide resources, text assistance, as well as counseling. Some well-known national crisis resources are the Trevor Project, which provides crisis services for those under the age of 25, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, also known as GLESSN, provides information to allies and advocates in creating social justice changes regarding inclusivity and equity. Online therapeutic counseling is also available through foundations such as Pride Institute and Counseling. Support groups are also available online and in the community to provide support, resources, and validation to sexual minority youth who are suffering. In-person social groups help to create a true sense of community where you can make friends and socialize outside of the group, which can be incredibly beneficial at this age. Military-connected resources are available as well. Branch affiliate support offices, such as the Family Advocacy Program and Fleet and Family Support Center, can provide both counseling for the active duty member and resources for the family to seek assistance within the military community. Private counseling is also available. A quick search within a 25-mile radius from Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam shows over 100 providers that accept military insurance, which is TRICARE. The Cullen Clinic is a national military-affiliated therapeutic support service center available to active duty dependents, parents of active duty service members, and veterans. They focus on evidence-based practices and counseling, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, emotionally focused therapy, and EMDR, to name a few. They also provide case management services for family in need. As one can see, the heterosexist history of the military can have a significant mental health effect on military-connected sexual minority youth. But there is promise that as acceptance and inclusion grows, more LGBT conscious supports will be put into place and that more training will occur, especially within military medicine. High-ranking members of the armed forces need to continue speaking out against discrimination and victimization of those who identify as LGBT.